We've all heard the buzz about climate change, global warming, and the ever-dreaded rising sea levels. But have you ever wondered, just for a moment, what would happen if all the ice on Earth suddenly melted overnight? Imagine it, a world without glaciers, icebergs, or frozen tundras. It's enough to give you chills, but let's break it down in a way that's not only educational but a little bit entertaining too. After all, we're talking about an event that could reshape our planet faster than you can say climate crisis. If you're ready for a thrilling, slightly terrifying adventure through a world with no ice, buckle up. The melting ice, a slow and icy disaster. To put it simply, the melting of all Earth's ice would have an enormous impact, one that would drown cities, alter ecosystems, and quite frankly, turn the planet into something straight out of a science fiction movie. However, before we dive into the hypothetical world of melting ice, let's warm up with some basic science. Right now, about 71% of Earth's surface is covered by water, but roughly 2% of the planet's water is locked up in glaciers and ice sheets. Most of this is in Antarctica, about 60%, and Greenland, about 10%. So if all that ice melted, we have quite a bit of excess water to contend with, about 70 meters, 230 feet, a bit. Talk about a splash. When you watch an ice cube melt in your drink, you may notice that the water level doesn't rise or fall. The ice simply replaces the same amount of water it occupies. But what happens when that ice is spread across massive glaciers or frozen sea ice? It turns out, even a slight change in these frozen giants would have an earth-shaking impact. Think of it like removing the stabilizers from a giant ship. The world would essentially start rocking back and forth. Let's talk sea level. Prepare for a tsunami of numbers. Right now, about 5.8 million square miles of Earth's surface is covered by ice. But what if that entire frozen expanse melted overnight? Brace yourselves, because the sea level would rise by about 230 feet, about 70 meters. That's enough to completely submerge the Tower Bridge in London, wipe out Miami, and turn the coast of Australia into a watery wasteland. And we're just getting started. Every coastal city, major ports, and islands around the globe would find themselves underwater. Cities like Venice, the Netherlands, and a large chunk of low-lying areas around the world would vanish beneath the waves. The world would essentially become one big beachfront property, minus the cool vacation vibes. Goodbye Miami, hello Waterworld. Miami, once known for its stunning beaches, would turn into an underwater city. If you've ever wondered how the movie Waterworld would play out in real life, here's your answer. The coastline of Australia would be obliterated, dragging 80% of the country's population into the abyss. Places like Venice and the Netherlands, two of the most iconic cities, with their picturesque canals, would transform from tourist havens to sunken ruins. And let's not even talk about New York City's iconic skyline, which would likely be just a faint memory seen only by scuba divers. So next time you visit these places, maybe pack a snorkel or just find a sturdy life raft. But it's not all bad news for every continent. Africa, for instance, would largely remain untouched by the sea level rise. The Sahara might get even hotter, but hey, you'll finally get that tan you've always dreamed of, right? However, the extreme heat waves and rising temperatures would turn vast parts of the continent into uninhabitable deserts. Imagine trying to survive in the Sahara, but it's a few degrees hotter than usual. Yikes. Goodbye, comfortable climate, hello scorching survival conditions. A world of heat and drowning, a hot mess. While parts of Africa might avoid a watery grave, the rest of the world would struggle with massive environmental changes. As the ice caps melt, all that water would release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. The ice caps are like giant refrigerators, keeping the air cool. Without them, the planet would heat up even more. Ice needs high CO2 concentrations to melt, and as it melts, it would make the air harder to breathe. Imagine trying to jog in the middle of summer without air conditioning. Now multiply that discomfort by 100. You wouldn't just be worrying about rising waters, you'd also be gasping for air, with each breath feeling like you're climbing a mountain at 10,000 feet. This sudden shift would have dire consequences for life as we know it. Ocean currents, which are crucial for distributing heat around the globe, would go haywire. Without the stabilizing force of the polar ice, ocean temperatures would rise, affecting sea creatures and ecosystems. Sea creatures, particularly polar animals, would face extinction. Penguins, gone. Polar bears, bye-bye. If animals can't adapt to a new world, they might find themselves out of a home sort of like an unwanted guest at an already packed party. The good news: humans could probably throw them a lifeline if we act in time. Mother Nature gets moody, changing weather patterns. Now let's talk about the weather. The changes wouldn't stop at rising seas and deadly heat waves. No. When the ice melts, there would be a major shift in wind and weather patterns. Without the reflective properties of the ice, the sun would heat the oceans more intensely, drawing up moisture and forming thicker clouds. These clouds would initially gather over mountain regions, only to unleash a torrent of rain. And we're not talking about your average spring shower. We're talking about heavy rains that could flood deserts and completely alter ecosystems. Areas that once saw minimal rainfall would be drowned in water, while places with already high levels of precipitation would dry up, causing crop failures and a looming global famine. Hurricanes, earthquakes, and tsunamis, oh my! The stormy weather would escalate into natural disasters beyond imagination. Without the ice to balance the Earth's climate, oceanic hurricanes would become more frequent, bringing with them even more flooding. And the Earth's crust would be even more volatile. A small earthquake off the coast could cause massive tsunamis, devastating entire regions in a matter of moments. Could you imagine the chaos when all this happens at once? Global migration, a nightmare for governments. As if all the flooding and weather changes weren't bad enough, the melting ice would trigger a mass migration like the world has never seen. Imagine millions of people displaced from their homes, trying to escape the rising waters and extreme heat. Governments would struggle to manage the situation, overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the disaster. Entire nations would face crisis as they attempt to accommodate refugees, rebuild cities, and restore basic infrastructure. The world as we know it would be unrecognizable. Social order would crumble, economies would collapse, and people would be forced to adapt or perish. The global migration would create chaos on a scale we've never encountered before. The only question is, would humanity be able to survive in this new world? A world without ice now. Don't worry. While all this sounds like the plot of a post-apocalyptic thriller, we're not exactly in danger of all the ice melting overnight. However, it is melting. And if we continue on the current path of climate change, the ice could be gone in the next few thousand years. In fact, even the oldest ice core, which has been storing information about Earth's climate for over 1.5 million years, is now showing signs of melting. If we continue to fuel the fire of climate change, Earth could be entirely ice-free in about 5,000 years. It sounds like an eternity, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not really that long. So, while we may not be around to see the world's ice caps melt completely, our children, grandchildren, and their grandchildren might have to live in a world that looks very different from the one we know today. How can we prevent this icy future? We're not powerless in the face of this massive crisis. There are actions we can take to mitigate the effects of climate change and slow down the melting of ice. Reducing carbon emissions, transitioning to renewable energy sources, and protecting natural ecosystems are just a few ways we can keep the ice from melting at an alarming rate. The future is still in our hands, but only if we start making changes now. So go ahead, start using less plastic, ride your bike to work, or switch to a solar-powered grill. Small actions add up to big changes. And there you have it, an icy scenario that could reshape the world as we know it. If you enjoyed this mind-blowing journey into the future, hit that like and subscribe. Don't forget to share with your friends, because who doesn't want to imagine a world where the oceans are a little too close for comfort? Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay dry.